Man. It's Monday. I don't want to go to school. Good thing you guys don't have to. Happy Monday morning. Hopefully you guys aren't feeling like that. Hopefully you guys have a good weekend and a rejuvenated weekend and you're ready to get back into school, right? Today we have lesson 4 in our language arts. We have which is subordinate. So that's a funny title. We've learned about subordinating conjunctions, but do you guys know what the word subordinate means? So the definition in the dictionary for subordinate is, as an adjective, it means lower in rank or position. So keep that in mind as we are reading over our lesson today, that subordinate means lower in rank or kind of less important. All right, so which is subordinate? Let's start reading at the top of page 14. A complex sentence consists of one independent clause and one or more dependent clause. The main sentence contains the most important information. The dependent clause, also called the subordinate clause, has the less important information or details. All right, so our independent clause, remember our independent clause stands on its own and it has the most important information. Our dependent clause, which depends on our other part of the sentence, also called the subordinate clause, has the lesser important information. It's lower in rank. It's the subordinate clause. You've already practiced combining two sentences into a complex sentence by making one of them a subordinate clause, all right? We've done this already. We've combined two sentences into one. When you do this, you have a choice. You need to determine which sentence you will make subordinate, or which sentence you will use a subordinate clause, a subordinate conjunction, or relative pronoun, and put the lesser important information in there. That is up to you guys to decide that, all right? So their sentence, I have up here on the board. They have Fanny Crosby wrote thousands of hymns. Fanny was blind. All right, so we have two sentences up here that we are going to combine. Usually, the information in the subordinate clause is less important than the information in the independent clause, all right? So we went over this. How will you decide which sentence to make subordinate? How will you decide which sentence to make subordinate? That will depend on what you're writing, all right? So if you're writing about, we'll just keep reading. Suppose you're writing about all the things blind people can accomplish. Then you would want to emphasize her blindness. So we would want to put her blindness with our independent clause, all right? So that's how we would write that sentence. If we would want to emphasize her blindness, we would say Fanny Crosby, who wrote thousands of hymns, was blind, all right? So our independent clause is Fanny Crosby was blind, all right? That can stand on its own. And then who wrote thousands of hymns doesn't really make sense by itself. So it depends on our other part of the sentence. And remember, if it is not, what's my word I'm thinking of? If it's not essential, remember if it's not essential, we can add our commas. So we don't need to know this for our sentence to make sense. So we would add commas. If we need our dependent clause, then we would not use commas. Moving on to the next paragraph, it says the emphasis is on Fanny's blindness rather than her writing thousands of hymns. All right, so we're emphasizing that she was blind because in our subordinate clause, which is the lesser important information, we're talking about that she wrote thousands of hymns. But if you are writing about famous hymn writers, you would want to emphasize the fact that she wrote many hymns, all right? All right, so that's how we would write this. If we're wanting to want to emphasize the fact that she wrote a lot of hymns, we could say Fanny Crosby, who was blind, and again, remember this is a non-essential phrase, so we would add quotation mark, or we would add commas. Fanny Crosby, who was blind, wrote thousands of hymns, all right? Notice the difference? Notice we're emphasizing our more important information up here. Fanny Crosby was blind, and then down here we're emphasizing that she wrote thousands of hymns. Fanny Crosby wrote thousands of hymns. All right? So when we're combining our sentences, look at the two sentences that we are combining and decide which sentence has the most important information. And then make that sentence your independent clause. And then add the other sentence, making it your dependent clause using a subordinate conjunction or a relative pronoun, all right? I'm gonna quickly go over numbers 1 and 5 up here on the board, just for your new part, so give me a second. Okay, so for numbers 1 through 4, you're supposed to write a complex sentence, use the second sentence as a subordinate clause. Use the relative pronoun or subordinating conjunction in parentheses to introduce the subordinating clause, all right? So our relative pronoun, see if you can see that right there, right there, right there. We're gonna use those. For our second sentence, so they tell us what to do here. Our first sentence is our independent clause, and then our second sentence is gonna be our subordinating clause with our less important information. So the way we could write this using our relative pronoun which is the idea for the Slinky, which is one of America's favorite toys, came from a spring, all right? Notice how we just combine the two sentences with our subordinate clause containing our less important information. And then that's what you're doing for numbers 2, 3, and 4. Number 5 through 7, you're just gonna write a complex sentence and decide which to use as a subordinate clause. So in the answer key, it says to ask your teacher if you have something different. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, but if you go ahead and score it and you have something different, you can maybe send me a picture of it. Just message me privately or something like that, and I can maybe check it for you. But for number 5, we have Blaise Pascal was 19 years old when he devised the first calculator. So what would be our most important information? We'd probably be that he devised the calculator, right? He invented the calculator. So we could write when Blaise Pascal was 19. So here's our subordinating conjunction. Here's our subordinating clause. We could say he devised the first calculator, all right? So you can go through and do numbers 6 and 7. And then for number 8, you're writing a definition for what subordinate means, all right? Lower in rank or less important, something like that, all right? And looking over your We Remember, looks pretty good. We have a quiz then tomorrow, which would be Tuesday. We have a quiz, and so don't forget to study your checklist really good, and then study your spelling words, and make sure you know these. You guys will be fine for your quiz, all right? Happy Monday, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day.